Welcome back to another video. So, my Uncle Ronald's coming over. I'm doing some reloading right now, and he really wants to see my setup, see what I'm reloading, what bullets. It could get a little interesting. He's pretty old school, so this should be fun. Hello there, Jimmy. It's a pretty nice setup you got. You got some classics. You got the Pacific Super Deluxe press, really impressive. Oh, I love that you actually have an analog beam scale. I hate those electronic ones. So what are you reloading today? Uncle Ronald, it's great to see you. Thanks. I really like my setup for reloading. So you know how you hate the 6.5 Creedmoor? Oh, I hate the 6.5 Creedmoor. Most overrated wussy cartridge ever made. Right. So I actually got a bigger version of the 6.5 Creedmoor. I think you might actually like it, Ronald. This is the 6.5 PRC. And the gun loves the 143 grain ELDX, but I really want to try these bullets out. I've heard such great things that they're so accurate. Son, let me teach you something here. I have 40 years of hunting and reloading experience. You've got to stay away from those frangible burger bullets. They're terrible. Let me show you what you really need. This here is the greatest cartridge ever made. And it's shooting the greatest bullet ever made. Nosler perfected the hunting bullet almost 80 years ago. You know what this is? This is a 270 Winchester with a 130 grain partition. Anything your little 6.5 PRC can do, this can do better. Ronald, look, I love the Nosler partition. So much respect for it, but I really want better than 1.5" accuracy out of my rifle. Last week I made a fun little video. I did it on, really it's a spoof video, but I did a top 5 man bun cartridge list. And so this week, to make things all fair, we're going to do a top 5 Elmer Fudd cartridge list. Now, before I start making fun of one of your favorite cartridges, just remember, this is just a spoof video. I own several of the cartridges I'm going to list. It's all just for fun, guys. Let's go over Elmer Fudd cartridge criteria. Number 1, the cartridge has to be at least 60 years old. And number 2, it has to be a really popular cartridge, so it can't be a dead cartridge. Sorry, 253,000 Savage, you don't qualify. It also needs to have fans that constantly remind you that new cartridges aren't doing anything new, that their cartridge has been doing it for 50, 60, 80, maybe 100 years. Lastly, the cartridge has to have a slower twist rate than the newer fancy cartridges of today. So let's get into this list. Coming in at number 5, this one was a little hard to put on the list, but I think it barely qualifies. So in front of me is the 7mm Remington Magnum. So why does this cartridge qualify as a Fudd cartridge? Well, let's go over it. It is over 60 years old, 61 years. It is extremely popular. And right now, there's hardly any rifles that come with a fast twist. So the fastest twist usually you get in a 7 mag is 1 and 9.5, maybe 1 and 9. But as I said, this barely makes a list because there are some rifle manufacturers that are coming out with 1 and 8 twists. So the bullet ranges you're going to be shooting in a 7 mag are 120 up to usually around 165 with a slower twist rate. The number 1 reason why I have the 7mm Remington Magnum on the Fudd list is because of its fans. In the last year, I've made quite a few 7mm PRC videos, and not surprisingly, the 7mm Remington Magnum is brought up quite a bit when it's compared to the 7mm PRC. And I can't tell you how many comments I get of people saying, Yeah, I'm just going to stick with my 7 mag. This does nothing new that my 7 mag can't do. There's really no reason to have a 7mm PRC because of the 7 mag. Just a lot of comments like that. Coming in at number 4 is one of my favorite cartridges. In fact, it was the second rifle / cartridge I've ever owned, is the 4570. The 4570 is originally a US military cartridge made in the late 1800s. And in the last 40, 50 years, this cartridge has really made a comeback for civilians that just love a big 45 caliber cartridge. And of lately, this cartridge I feel like has been greatly exaggerated as this awesome dangerous game cartridge or a really good brush gun. It's fine. Don't get me wrong, I love the 4570, and especially in a Ruger number 1 where you can get the pressures up a lot more. You can get some pretty cool performance, a 500 grain at 1800 feet per second, a 350 grain at 2200. I've hand loaded a 400 grain around 2200 feet per second. The thing's a thumper, but the ballistics are absolutely terrible. This gun is not good past 100 yards. And it's not the best dangerous game gun. I know you Alaskan guys are going to get mad at me. But, it's good. But it's definitely a bit overrated. Okay, we're into the top 3. And any of these top 3, you can make a really solid argument of being the number 1 Elmer Fudd cartridge. But for number 3, I have the 3030 Winchester. And the reason it's at number 3 is I'm out west. Not as many people are hunting with the 3030 Winchester. Now, there's still a handful of people that take the lever action and go mule deer hunting with the 3030. But out where I'm at, most people will pick a traditional bottleneck cartridge. The 3030 is, well, it works. That's what I'll say about it. And I know it's an extremely popular cartridge out Midwest and the East and the South. It's a humble cartridge, we'll say that. Shooting a 140 grain at 2300 feet per second is by no means a cartridge made for long distance. I mean, with it being well over 100 years old, and there's still a lot of fans for it. I see the fans mostly in my Weatherby videos where I'm talking about a powerful Weatherby cartridge. I'm always reminded by someone saying their grandpa had no issues taking elk with a 3030 Winchester, so why do you need an overpowered Weatherby cartridge? There's some merit to it, but I doubt their grandpa was shooting elk at 400 yards with a 3030. Gracing us at the number 2 spot is the Greatest Generation cartridge. It is the Jack of all trades cartridge. It is one of the most popular hunting cartridges in North America. It is, of course, the 30-06 Springfield. This cartridge is old, very old. It is very popular, and it does things pretty darn well. But when it's a jack of all trade, it really doesn't specialize in anything. Now, I'll argue, and its fans will definitely argue, that it's just as relevant as it's ever been, and I think there's some truth to it. These modern bullets really waking up the 30-06, but its fans definitely overhype it. Whenever you're watching a video or talking on the internet about one of the newer cartridges, the fans of the 30-06 will be there to make sure you don't forget about the 30-06 and how, well, the 30-06 has been doing it for over 100 years, so why do you even need this cartridge? Coming in at number 1, I think you guys know what this is. I'm sorry, guys, for those that are big fans of this cartridge. I had to do it. To me, this is the epitome of an Elmer Fudd cartridge. It is the 270 Winchester. Now, I own a 270. I really have a lot of respect for the 270. It's a good cartridge that arguably is the do-it-all cartridge for lower 48. It's great for deer, not too bad for elk, and it's definitely doable with black bear. But the reason this is number 1, it has to do with its rabid fans. And I think rabid really defines them. There are probably a lot more 30-06 fans than 270, but they're not near as vocal as the 270 fans. The 270 fans will let you know that there's nothing new under the sun, and that the 270 has been doing it for almost 100 years, and there's really no reason to get a new cartridge when you can just buy a 270 Winchester. Now the 270, it comes with a 1 in 10 twist, which if you're at low elevations, you will not be able to shoot the highest BC bullets out of a 270. It really can't keep up with more modern cartridges, but the 270 fans will let you know that it actually does. The 270 kind of has a funky design. You know, its parent case is the 30-06 neck down to 270, and as I said, it's kind of funky looking. It's got a really long neck, and the diameter just makes the case look a little weird. But with all that being said, it is definitely still a relevant cartridge, and companies are now making 270s with faster twists so that you can shoot really high BC bullets. It might not be a Fudd cartridge for too much longer.